Thank you for coming out. So we have a lot of great people who are in the audience, and I think it's going to lead to a great conversation this evening. I thank you so much for coming out and supporting this event. Thank you. Before we continue, I would love to ask that Robbie Tolan please come forward. I don't know where Robbie went, but Robbie was featured in the show. Oh, there he is. There you go, sir. And Robbie is a very special person, of course, and a good friend. We became extremely close through this whole process of dealing with his case and other cases as well. And Robbie has been traveling with me, and he will be continuing to travel with me throughout the country with these town halls. And the reason why I asked that Robbie be a part of this is because a lot of times when you speak of cases of racial profiling in this country, and these are cases that officially been named a racial profiling cases, a lot of times you don't have the victims. Unfortunately, they're the ones who are deceased and passed away. Here you have a young man, Robbie, who sort of a mirror image of like myself in terms of our makeup and where we grew up and things of that nature and how we grew up. You have him still with us, and I think it's always powerful to hear for those who are stricken with this pain, not just the families, but those who are still with us who can talk. And so, Robbie, if you want to say a few words, sir, I just want to open the floor for you to do that.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yep, I can hear myself, so yeah, we good. Well, I'll give you guys a brief update on the case and where it's at now. Well, I've seen it 1,000 times, but I can't remember where it was in the film, where the case was in the film.
It wasn't in there.
It wasn't in there? Okay. So they talked about the criminal.
Criminal trial, yes.
So as you saw in the film, Officer Cotton was acquitted of aggravated assault. We filed a federal civil lawsuit as well, which was thrown out due to qualified immunity. We appealed to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals in New Orleans, which is one of the most conservative, to put it nicely, conservative appeals courts in the country. That was denied. We filed an appeal in bank, which means all 17 judges on the panel, we appealed to have them all hear it, and that was denied as well. So having gone through all the necessary channels, we appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, and on May 5th of last year, May 5th, 2014, we got a unanimous decision in our favor. Unanimous 9-0 decision, which marks the first time in 10 years that the courts have ruled against a police officer. Not only that, but Justice Alito and Scalia, who are, you know, two of the more conservative ones, they wrote opinions in our favor as well. So you know, that's where the case is now. We have a court date now. So basically, what the Supreme Court said was, the courts, only considered the evidence favorable to the police officer. You didn't even consider the evidence most favorable to the Tolan family. You got it wrong. We're going to kick it back to you, and you have to consider this evidence. So now we have a trial date for September 14th, 2015. So keep us in your prayers, please.
Well, I guess we could open the floor for a few questions because I know we just saw the film, and you may have questions that you would like to ask, or myself or Robbie. So I just want to allow some time for that to happen. Do we have any questions? No? No questions, huh? So we can move forward with the program. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am.
Robbie, I know that everything happened so fast during that time, but now that everything
Well, you know, if you look at the castle doctrine, you know, I can do whatever I want to do on my property, you know, and I hadn't stolen a car, I hadn't done anything wrong. You know, my parents come outside in their pajamas, the homeowners come outside in their pajamas saying, you know, that's my son, that's my nephew, this is our car. You know, common sense, deductive reasoning would say, wait a minute, I don't think these people in their pajamas stole a house. You know, maybe they do live here. You know, let's step back. Can I see some ID? I wouldn't have done anything different. And if I won't say that, but I was gonna say something real incriminating, but no. And especially when you touch my mother, no, I wouldn't have done anything different. And you know, we get the question all the time, you know, Mrs. Tolan, do you think if you stayed in the house, you know, Robbie would have been shot? And, you know, my mother's, you got a little bit of it on the film, but she ain't no punk. You know, she's fiery. So, you know, her response is, you know, what parent is going to hear the police harassing their child and stay in and say, oh, I hope everything's okay. Let me just pray for the best. You know? No, I mean, you know, it's instinctive. No, I wouldn't have done anything different. Oh, and let me add, I forgot to add. Not only did take a couple of steps back, not only did the federal judge in Houston throw the case out initially, she also ordered us to pay the officers' court fees, which totaled about $8,000. So yeah. I think that's about it.
Another question? Yes.
My question is really an honest motive.
Hold on for just a second.
Oh.
There you go. We can hear you now.
You may have been asked this before. Did you ever think that your family and skin tone matters with the black race? In class, that you ever would have, not the profiling, but like your mother being treated as so and your father, or your family being treated like that?
Good question.
Because of skin tone? Was it more shocking to you? Honestly?
Yeah, it was. Again, at the time, we had lived in that same house for 15 years. And in that same neighborhood, I went to the local high school, which is about a mile from the house. I played baseball there all 4 years. And the baseball team at Bel Air is normally nationally ranked. So they know who the baseball players are. They know who the residents are. You know, you have to think Bel Air is a city within a city. You know, Houston is this, Bel Air is this within the city, and they have their own police department. So, and the cops weren't rookies. You know, one was a 10-year vet, one was a 6-year vet, and I've been there 15 years longer than both of them. So they know who lives where and who, you know, who their residents are. So, it was shocking. And, you know, I hadn't, before we lived in Bel Air, I grew up in San Diego, which is not at all nearly as diverse as Houston is. I had a little bit of it, but I wasn't really mistreated in San Diego, nor was I mistreated in Houston, Bel Air, or what have you. But so yeah, it was shocking, especially when, you know, like I said, we lived there for 15 years, and they know, you know, they know who their residents are, you know. So yeah, it was shocking.
Anyone else? I'm sorry?
She said, "How's my health?" Well, I still have a bullet in me, so that's not fun. You know, I have my good days and bad days. I mean, I don't know how many people out there got bullets, but it's not a good feeling, you know. You learn to manage it, you learn to deal with it, and you at some point you get used to it, get used to the pain. So I ache all the time. I hurt. I have back spasms all the time, but at this point it's something that I'm used to, which is unfortunate.
So Robbie, to piggyback on that quickly, and I'll let the gentleman ask a question. Currently, of course, we've been seeing this growing and I shouldn't say we've been seeing this growing, occasions of African American males being shot by police. Of course, we really started seeing it recently with the Trayvon Martin tragedy, and it began to build so on. And that could be a lot, of course, with technology, and that's why we're seeing a lot of this take place now. But how does this actually play on your mind, seeing this happen from time to time? What goes through your mind itself?
Yeah, I mean, it takes me back to day one. You know, I remember when I was getting to a point where I was starting to be as normal as I could be, and then you know, February of 2012, you know, Trayvon Martin gets shot, and I was in a bad place. You know, I went right back to day one. It took me right back all over again emotionally. And you guys may not know this. I know they didn't feature it in the film, but how many people remember the name Oscar Grant? Do you remember the movie Fruitvale Station? And there was a gentleman in New Orleans, Adolph Grimes. Adolph Grimes, Oscar Grant, Robbie Tolan, all shot on the same day by police. And Adolph Grimes, Oscar Grant, of course, are no longer with us. And so, you know, I think it's really important, despite, you know, feeling whatever kind of way I feel selfishly about what's going on, and, you know, despite no matter how much I want to crawl into a hole and not be bothered and not, you know, show my face and see anybody. I think it's really important for me to, you know, do what I'm doing, because, you know, you have people like Jordan Davis, Jordan Baker in Houston, which you guys may not know about, killed by off-duty cop riding his bike down the street. Grand jury didn't indict. Same type of thing. Michael Brown, Eric Garner, Rakia Boyd. I mean, the list goes on, and I shouldn't have started naming a list because I don't want to leave nobody off, but you know, you have those victims that can no longer speak. And so, you know, I went through something, you know, just like they did, and I'm here. So, you know, I can't be selfish about it. I gotta get out and speak for the voiceless. So
what are your fears?
Not fulfilling whatever destiny that God has ordained for me. I don't have any fears beyond that, because I've died once already. So I'm not scared of nothing.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you mentioned that they charged you and your family $8,000 for fees for officers. Have y'all considered a civil suit? Is there any possibility within the legal system to recoup your own expenses and medical fees through a civil lawsuit?
We have a civil lawsuit. The civil lawsuit the trial date is September 2014. But, you know, I think we discussed, the lawyers and us, we discussed trying to get that back. But I think it's something, I wish Ben Crump was here because he could tell you exactly, but it was something to the effect of it might jeopardize the case if we've asked. I don't know. So I don't know. But to give you a bigger perspective of, you know, what kind of sacrifices my parents made, and we all have made. My parents sold their house in Bel Air to take the case to the Supreme Court. You know, I mean, filing fees and attorney fees and printing for oh my, I'm having a brain fart. The document to send to the whatever, you know what I'm talking about. You know, all that costs money that we didn't have. You know, we didn't have that kind of disposable income to be trying to fight in court. But my parents sold their home in Bel Air to take the case to the Supreme Court. And my mother, I mean, this will speak to her tenacity and resilience, but it wasn't even a question for her. She didn't even think twice about it. You know, she preaches, I don't want this to happen to anyone else's child. And, you know, my name is on the document, Tolan v. Cotton. My name is on it, but it's not about Robbie Tolan. You know, it's about those that didn't get justice. I made it to the Supreme Court, but this is not a victory for me. You know, this is a victory for other people too. So, you know, that's all I got.
Okay. Well, thank you, Robbie. Okay, we're gonna move forward with the program. I want to first recognize there's some families in the audience, and I want to make sure I recognize them before we move ahead. Is the Ellison family here? Ellison family? Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, for coming out. The Monroe family. Is the Monroe family here? The Monroe? Thank you so much. And is the Carter family here? The Carter family? Okay. I'm looking everywhere here, and I should have been looking up there. I guess not. Well, we would like to move on, and I just want to recognize you for being here because I know that it's an ongoing fight with your cases. And I hope by having you here this evening that you could join the dialogue, and perhaps we could figure out a way collectively between civilians, of course, and law enforcement. We're here, and I thank you, sir, for coming, Chief, to have a good dialogue about what could be done, what can be done, so we can move forward collectively to make sure that these things don't happen again. So my hats are off to you, and I thank you for coming. Yes, ma'am? Sure. Yes. I'm sorry, Monroe Isidore. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for clearing that up. I'm sorry, my apologies. Now I want to, and you know what, I'm going to allow you guys an opportunity to speak because I don't want you to come here without speaking. So I will allow you a lot of amount of time to speak after we get started, okay? Is that okay? All right, thank you. Okay, now I want to introduce my co-moderator, and how can I introduce her? She's a close friend. I call her family. She's a cousin to Emmett Till. She's also the executive director of the Mamie Till Mobley Foundation. And we're working together to make sure that we have this type of dialogue, not only about police and civilians. We're still dealing with a whole bunch of civil rights issues that we're finding around the country that still exists. But I would love for Erica to come up, and please give her a warm applause, because I can honestly tell you, if it wasn't for the unfortunate murder of Emmett Lewis Till, there would be no Keith Beauchamp filmmaker today. Emmett Till sparked my career at an early age. I was 10 years old when I first came across that Jet magazine, and I could never get that image out of my head. And so it's that inspiration I draw from those pictures, and of course, my lovely teacher, the late Mamie Till Mobley, who instilled in me the values for speaking for those who can no longer speak for themselves. So it's really, exciting to do this event with you, Erica, and I thank you for coming all the way from Chicago, and she wasn't feeling that well, but being here because it's just a moment in time. I mean, this is what I feel is a spiritual night, because of course we lost Mamie on this, this month, but I'm happy to have you. I'm sorry. Thank you.
I remember when Keith first came to the house to meet Mamie. And her husband, every time someone came to the house, he was trying to set me up on a date. It didn't work out for Keith and I, though. I just want to say thank you to the Mosaic Templars Center. This is a beautiful facility. I haven't had an opportunity to really see the exhibits, but I hope to do so before I leave. Thank you, Keith, for inviting me. This is my brother.
It's not an invite. We were supposed to do this together.
Right, but this is my brother, and we work on a lot of projects together, but this one is close to my heart. As an activist and working with many of the families whom Robbie called out and some he didn't, working very closely This is dear to me because I think it's important that as a community we come together and we try to work with our law enforcement and bridge the gap and start to build a level of trust that historically has really not existed over many, many years. I want to thank also Kelly Duda for working with Keith to facilitate this evening. I'm here to also bring up our distinguished panelists to come up and join us. Phyllis Brown, she's a social activist and a former member of SNCC, the SNCC. Mondale Robinson, the Executive Director for Conyers Institute of Public Policy. Chief Kenton Buckner, Little Rock Police Department. State Senator David J. Sanders, District 15. The Honorable Wendell Griffen, Circuit Judge, 6th District. And Ruth Shepherd, Executive Director of Just Communities of Arkansas. And while they're getting situated, I hope everyone received one of our push cards. They were on your chairs. If you did not, there are some on the tables in the back. This is information about the Mamie Till Mobley Memorial Foundation. You can find our website information on here and all of our social media information. The foundation was established in 2009 to honor her memory and to continue her legacy. We mentor children. We work with youth in the Chicagoland community and around, but we're also working on the Emmett Till Unsolved Civil Rights Crimes Act. We work with families who have cold cases from the civil rights era. We work with the families of yesterday to bridge the gap, working with families who have been victims of racial injustice today in hopes of preventing families from having to be confronted with it on tomorrow. So please find more information about what we're doing on our website. As Keith mentioned, this is the 60th year approaching in August of Emmett Till's murder. We will be hosting the commemoration, the 60th year commemoration in Chicago in August 28th through the 30th. You will see save the dates, coupons in the back. Please take one. It's going to be a full weekend of events in Chicago. So we hope if anyone is interested, you will look us up so you can join us. So you want to start with the first question? So I learned a long time living in the home with Mamie Till Mobley, Emmett's mother, that we can live in peace or in pieces. She turned her tragedy into triumph. When Emmett was murdered, she didn't just lie down. She got up fighting. She was thrust into a role of activism, not because she wanted to be, but because she had to be, not just for herself, but for others. And as Robbie was talking, I was listening, and he could have easily just given up and turned over and didn't do anything, him and his family, but they decided to fight. And like he said, it's not just for himself, it's for others. And so what we're here tonight to do is to talk about how we can come together as a community to find a level of peace, a standard where we can stop and prevent some of the tragic murders and get along with our law enforcement. And I think one of the things we need to focus on is how to develop that trust. And if I can direct my first question to Chief Kenton Buckner, I wanted to ask you, how do you feel we can first begin to start to develop a strong, solid foundation of trust with the community? What is the number one, the key factor with building that trust?
First of all, thank you for inviting me to this forum. This is probably fourth, fifth, or sixth forum that I've done in my very short tenure here. Thank you to the Kelly Duda for reaching out to me to have the police department participate in this. I think it's important that we as police departments participate in these uncomfortable conversations. These are not times that when you think about what your 8-hour, 10, 12-hour day entails that you kind of look forward to because of these kind of moments. But I can tell you that if we are to get to the other side of this, then everyone has to be at the table when we're talking about what needs to be done, what's currently going on, and then how we get to our desired destinations. What can we do? When you talk about, you asked me for one thing. The one thing that I would say is trust is a two-way street. I think it's important that the community trusts its police department, and I think that we have to do the things that we need to do as an agency to earn that trust. But I think that we need to see that's a two-way street. I think it's sometimes often forgotten that because of the things that we experience in certain sections of the community with certain demographics, that it's kind of brushed over that the police sometimes have a lack of trust because of behavior or some of the things that we experience on a daily basis. So I would think that if we come to the table with everyone recognizing that there's opportunity for improvement, that there's enough, as it relates to the problems that we have, there's enough blame, there's enough credit, and enough work for everyone. So this will not be solved by the police department. This will not be solved by the community. We're not going to agree on everything. And if we're all in agreement on everything in this room, then someone's probably not thinking. So I think that those are some of the things that we need to be mindful of as we move forward.
So I need to ask you the question. All right, and that question is, so how do we earn this trust? Because you have a long history of being distrustful. So how do we go about earning this trust? That's my question to you.
How do you go about earning my trust? First of all, we build genuine bridges to common destinations. We need to have genuine conversation, interaction about things that we can do collectively to get to those destinations. Then we have to both look, first of all, at self. What is my role in the situation that's going on in our community? And what can I do to improve that? As a police department, where are we wrong? Where do we have opportunities for improvement as to how we engage people? What about our training? What about our recruiting? What about our diversity? From a community standpoint, are we supporting the police? Are we there for them when they call upon us? When we're on a parking lot where a 19-year-old young man has his head blown off in front of 500 people, can we all say that we didn't see that? So that's how you gain a police department's trust, by truly engaging in a quality of life in those communities that we occupy, and everyone engage in public safety.
I agree with you. Training, recruiting, and what was the other thing you said? Anyway, I agree with that part. But what about transparency when things like this happen? When tragedies like this happen? They say sunlight is the best antiseptic, okay? When I was shot, nobody wanted to talk about it. It was a cover-up. Everybody, all the police were hush-hush. And I don't mean to be disrespectful. I'm asking, you know, what about transparency? What about when things like this happen? Are the police, when the police aren't held accountable, who holds them accountable? You know, and not every police chief has your point of view. So, you know, I commend you for that. But like in Texas, in Ferguson, you know, everybody's hush-hush. You know, who do I call to protect me when the police don't do it? If I got shot in my front driveway, who do I call? If not the police, if the police shot me.
Well, I can't speak to the dynamics of your particular situation. You asked me about transparency. Transparency is critically important to building trust. We cannot make decisions in shadows or in darkness. We have to make things that we're willing to publicly stand behind why we did what we did. Your particular situation, I don't know why, what happened there, what the things are. I've only saw one side of most of the stories that were presented in the documentary. I'm sure that there are other folks who would give maybe an opposing view, and there's usually three sides to every story. There's the police's version, there's the citizen's version, and the truth sometimes, for most part, lies somewhere in the middle. Now, But for me, it's transparency, independent investigation, someone who can take a look at the decisions that I've made. Have I been thorough? Have we considered everything? Did we give leading questions? Did we bring all witnesses to the table? Was all of the evidence submitted? And even when we do that, sometimes that won't be enough. But I have to sit in my seat and still try to do the best thing that I can, because at the end of the night, I have to live with the decisions that I make. I can't be responsible for what other agencies are doing or what other cities are doing. I can only be responsible for what's going on in Little Rock on my watch. And I'm 7 months into the job.
Wow.
I will say that I think for the sake of the possibility of growth in this conversation and outcomes, if we stay away from situation and talk about institutional ills. And we know that, you know, there are some ills that are universal as it pertains to black folk and those that police black folk in this country. So rather than talking about individual situations or individuals' personal behaviors, we could talk about what reflects or what is a reflection of the institution at large.
I think, though, that you have to remember that justice is always personal. And I like to remind people that there's a difference between abstract reality and truth. I'm glad that we have a police chief who was willing to engage in these conversations.
Yes.
Now, I wasn't finished. But the fact of the matter is, I'll be even more pleased when the Little Rock Police Department formally outlaws racial profiling. Now, that is something that can be done without a vote of any director. It can be done without anybody having a meeting. It can be done by simply saying, you know, I used to command people. I set the policy. There will not be racial profiling. Anybody who does it gets fired. And therefore, people stop profiling. And if you don't do that, I like having good conversations, but I also like good practices.
I think the judge is onto something, who's also my pastor.
Thank you so much.
When he talks about, you know, the chief making policies, and that is a huge step, but I also think we got to do something more than just, we can't legislate equality. We can try, but until we have a police department or any system or any institution that truly believes or buy into equality, we're just going to have we have rules. I mean, we've been technically free since the Emancipation Proclamation, but I dare anybody to try to show me how black folk are free in this country when we still, on paper, make up 3/5 of white folk in every aspect of life.
I really want to second that motion, because I'm not an apologist for the police at all, but they are just like us. You know, we've got great police officers, and we've got not so great police officers, and we've got police officers who make mistakes. I mean, they're just like us. So and there's a lot of racism in all of us, or bias in all of us. So we can't, you know, even if we, and I think we probably do have a policy against racial profiling. I think the chief will say we do.
I don't know of a police department in the country that doesn't have a policy on racial profiling.
But that doesn't solve the problem.
Judge Griffin's point, enforcing that and holding folks accountable to that is where you will probably see separation. But there's probably not an agency in the country that doesn't have a policy for that.
We'd like to hear from Senator Sanders.
Yeah, I think, you know, when I was watching the film, and a great job, and the cinematography was good. It held. It really. I mean, there was obviously the content, but it was really well produced. You know, I was looking at your case. I think the thing that made me, as a policymaker, it broke my heart, is that it began with an error. Mm-hmm. And you know, I think you think if the keystroke had been put in correctly, we would hope that the entire event wouldn't have happened. I think some of this, and listen, I mean, we have to be honest. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's medicine, it's law enforcement. There are errors that occur. I think at a very base level, we have to look to try to eliminate those type of errors. And again, I don't know the specifics of the case. I was trying to read as much as I could, you know, at my seat because I was so intrigued. So I think there are some easy things that we can do, and then getting to the heart of, I mean, some of the other comments about, you know, just what happens. I mean, in my look, I am a white conservative Republican. I am, but I want to tell you something. I think the expectation for safety knows no bounds. It should know, I mean, it should be, I mean, to the extent that, you know, we're celebrating Dr. King's legacy, you know, and if you've read about any of the stuff that I work on and looking at our criminal justice system and parole system that we have, and I see just overall what breaks my heart is an overall lack of an expectation of safety. I say that as a father of 5, and you describe Bel Air, and you describe really, you know, your upbringing and your involvement in the community, and look, I mean, a lot of people have been victimized by crime, and when you don't have the expectation for safety for yourself, it takes a toll. And then to compound that with the history that is so evident that, I mean, it is there. You know, I think as a policymaker, that's something that we have to be mindful of. And so in the beginning, when we started talking about, when Kelly was talking about being connected or being disconnected, I think as a public, I think we should have the expectation that our political leaders, on whatever level, are going to take the time to try to understand things from different perspectives, because I think that is the ultimate connectivity, is when we're all interconnected and we understand someone's perspective, and that is very important.
I think that going back to the issue of trust, the whole question of trust is a function of your experience over time with people and institutions. There is little reason, and I say this intentionally, there is little reason for people who have been systematically victimized by law enforcement practices that everybody recognizes, and even law enforcement recognizes are illicit, to trust the good words that we're going to do better. I didn't mean that to suggest that we should distrust every police officer. I do mean that it takes a whole lot more than, I'm sorry, I didn't mean bad, to get my trust. Oops is not a skill. You know, really, oops is really not a skill. And it isn't a word that builds trust. If I run over you and I say oops, that doesn't make you trust my driving. And so I think we really need to think about what functionally are we going to be asking the people who lead law enforcement and who act in law enforcement, who have the power to kill people, and to walk away from it. Because this is not about black on black crime. And the chief and I have had this conversation. I don't have the black on black crime conversation because, see, racial profiling is not about black on black crime.
Okay.
It's about cops on black crime.
Right. So I have another question.
When cops get treated like black folks who kill black folks get treated, then I can have more trust. But when cops who kill black folks don't get treated that way, I don't have trust.
So my next question would be, and we want to try to keep our remarks to 2 minutes each, and when we pose a question, everyone can have an opportunity to respond because we want to leave time for questions and comments from the floor. It was a statement that the senator made, and then I'm going to bounce to Keith. When you said it started from an error with Robbie, So what is it? A lot of the cases, they start with errors, or they could actually stop to double check or pause. What prevents the police from pausing momentarily or hesitating to prevent some of these fatalities or these errors? What prevents them from doing that? Is it, and it's not directed at you, Senator, directly, but it's just a general question. What is it? Is it their perceptions, the preconceived perceptions that they have of the victims? Is it a cultural preconception of the victims that they already have, that they just figure that they're already up to no good? Or, you know, why won't they pause to stop? I mean,
part of it starts with racial profiling.
We know that part, but what else is it?
But I said it starts with that. You have to also deal with the issue of cognitive bias, because there is, if there's one thing that, and people have different opinions of Darren Wilson's testimony of grand jury in Ferguson, but there's one thing everybody can agree on. Darren Wilson does not believe that he could do anything wrong.
You know I knew the answer though, right?
Say again?
I knew the answer, but I'm just saying, what is it?
And so the bias on the part of a mindset that says, I can do no wrong, is that everything I do is right, even when I'm wrong.
So now, what can be done systematically to help reduce some of these preconceptions? And I'm not saying that it's just on the police department side, because as a community, there are some things I feel that we can do, that we do, like the detective said. There are some things that we can do as a community that we don't do. So come on, let's go to the floor.
We have some answers on the floor that I want to get to, because it's going to be a town hall participation. It's not just a panel participation. So
and I'm sorry, Chief, I called you detective. I apologize.
We could come back to you, Senator, if you're going to answer that, or whoever was going to answer that. I'm sorry, Judge.
Thank you. Echoing off Judge Griffen, and I want to commend Chief Buckner for being here. I've been to about 3 panels, and he's been very active and honest in his answers. But it's one thing that he brought up in the beginning, and it was trust. And for there to be trust, there has to be accountability. So the question I want to pose to the panel is, what are your feelings on the police policing the police? And what can be done, if anything, to make sure that the errors that occur throughout cases at the end, not at the beginning, but at the end, how can we put framework through policymakers like Senator Sanders and myself, what framework can be in place that makes sure that there is that level of trust through accountability through the police departments here in our city?
First of all, it's simple. Radical reconciliation. That's what we need to do. And if anybody know anything about, and I know some people do, so I shouldn't have said that, know anything about the Human Rights Commission and this state's lack of a Human Rights Commission and lawmakers' inability to act on such things like that, I think we continue to, right now, this conversation has been heavily focused on the police department, forgetting that the police department has a boss. And if you look around, you're looking at the police department's bosses. So when we fail to act, when we fail to hold the police department to any standard, or when we fail to hold our community or stand up for our community, then we've failed the system. We've allowed the system to do what it will to us. And that's our fault, because we need to stand up and we need to say, you can't kill 12-year-old kids in my community without having citizen oversight on whatever the process is.
You know, the poet June Jordan wrote this poem titled Poem About Police Violence, and I'm just going to give you a snippet of it, and it says, tell me something. What would you think would happen every time a black boy is killed? Then do we kill a cop? every time a black man is killed, do we kill a cop? Do you think the accident rate would reduce subsequently? So I want to tell you that I am unwillingly nonviolent. But you know, we got too many copycat. You know, we have far too many copycat George Zimmermans. Okay? And so until white people give up their whiteness, that white supremacy, all right, you can't create a system of justice because whiteness means power, all right? And white folks aren't going to give up their power unless we kill a cop.
I have a.
I think that one thing. I think one thing that that I will concur with Ms. Brown in is that the ugly and painful reality is that the terrorism of racial profiling, and I do call it terrorism by another name, is condoned by the wider society because the victims are not white. If white people were being killed by the police with the regularity that black and brown people are being killed by the police, white people would make sure that police agencies stopped it and that police racial profiling would mean something.
The gentleman in the back.
Okay.
Before that gentleman speaks, because you know I came here to engage in a respectful dialogue, and I think it's important that we're here. But one of the things that I don't want to just mull over this as if it was not said, any kind of conversation to where it is either suggested or inferred that the solution to this is killing a police officer is disrespectful.
Oh, I just read part of a poem.
I heard, I didn't interrupt you when you were talking. Please show me that same courtesy. Please show me that same courtesy. This room is full of intelligent people. You know what was inferred. You know what was suggested. I'm telling you, that's disrespectful.
Did I suggest to the audience that you take up arms? I simply read an excerpt from a famous poet named June Jordan.
I stand by my statement.
So it's disrespectful for me to read an excerpt from a poem, but it's not disrespectful for a policeman to take Isadore's life at 107 years old.
Come on now.
Well,
I want to ask
I want to say
a question, please. Are we gonna? Is this a panel discussion still? Okay. I'd just like to ask the chief of police a protocol question. Since you've been here, in the 7 months you've been here, I deal with a lot of people who have mental, psychological issues downtown. In fact, I know that some other municipalities give people a bus ticket, a one-way bus ticket to Little Rock, Arkansas. And one thing that I've noticed that when I'm dealing with an individual, particularly someone who has a mental problem, like someone that might walk in the middle of the street, you know, or something like that, one thing I've noticed is that whoever the most aggressive policeman is usually who sets the tone. It's like, I want to know if there's any protocol happening to let cooler heads prevail and perhaps bring in a mental health professional before the least tolerant, most impatient person shows up and then starts looking at his watch and says, let's get the, you know. What I've noticed is generally before policemen and the most impatient, aggressive one sets the tone, and I want to know what might be happening to deal with situations like that, specific to homeless population and psychologically troubled people.
We have a number of things. First of all, the officers are taught to de-escalate situations. Is every officer perfect? Does every officer exercise the general orders, the policies and procedures that we have to a point? No. When they don't do that, we have a process in place to hold them accountable for that. The thing that I would ask you, sir, that if you're seeing these things and you say that you see someone who's escalating escalating these situations or who is causing a problem for that, we need to know about that. You cannot hold me accountable for something that you did not bring to my attention. Secondly, Memphis, Tennessee is considered to be the platinum standard for crisis intervention training, commonly called CIT, which is basically a form of de-escalating individuals who have mental illness. Primarily, we deal with a lot of folks who are veterans, individuals who are homeless, and we're in the process of trying to get that training implemented largely through our police department. We have some officers who've had that training. I would like to have an agency where all of our patrol officers who primarily come in contact with the police who have that training. The agency that I came from had that. As a result of instituting that, we reduced injuries to our citizens. We reduced injuries to our officers. We were able to get individuals 72-hour observation period in a psychiatric facility rather than jail where they do not belong. So those are some of the things that I'm working on in the short term and for the long term as to how we will deal with that.
Rod, I would add to that, you know, the problem with mental illness and mental illness particularly in the correctional facilities and people being sentenced who are mentally ill. I mean, we deal with these cases all the time, and I had a case where a brother-in-law of a young man who had been sentenced to 4 years of aggravated robbery in Arkadelphia, Arkansas, was actually surprising. So he was going to flatten out his entire sentence, and he was being released from a maximum security facility. And what this brother-in-law was telling us was, he doesn't need to be out. He's a danger. There's a history of mental illness, and what we were told was that there was nothing that we could do, but with some work, we ended up getting this individual some help, and that's a big problem, because what was about to happen was this individual, this young man, was about to be let loose on the streets and was either going to do harm to himself or certainly do harm to someone else. Because I think that's a big problem. I mean, I think that's a big problem. And when you see these individuals incarcerated and put in with general population, it creates problems. And when you're not taking this into consideration, it even creates more problems. And I think it adds to the cycle. And that's a big issue for us that we're going to have to deal with.
The gentleman in the front here, sir. Can't hear you.
That's my allergy. Not on?
There's
yes.
some.
All right. First, I like to say that we're talking here, the problem we're facing, we can't do too much about it, because we need to know what the police forces are for. Primarily, they are to protect down here. That's what they're about. You say all we want to, but until we get to those people uptown, when they pass down to the police department, that's what's going to take place. I don't see police cars driving all up and down here, but they're all around my neighborhood, up and down the streets, up and down, but not down here. And I think that and I hear things happening, and I hope we don't come to that, of telling young black men how they're supposed to act when the police comes around. Because what we're actually doing then, we're feminizing, we're taking something away in which the black mothers, and thank God for the black mothers, but they had to kill the manhood in black young men in order for them to live. And we got to be very, very careful of what we're telling black folk. Yeah, you got to act, but Robbie acted as Robbie was supposed to act.
Right.
And we don't want to take that away. We don't want to take that away. And we need to understand right now that what we are facing is something deeper than what we're talking about. This that's going on now has worldwide significance. Until, and we look at sagging pants, we talk about sagging pants, and as repulsive as it is, it's deeper than that. It's young black men said, I don't give a damn about this country. I don't care. I'll show you what I care. Just kidding. And until we deal with that problem, and the only way that they're going to deal with it from up there, if they're going to have to recognize that these young men with sagging pants are waiting recruits for ISIS and all the other things that are going on in this country.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to ask you to kind of hurry it up because we're running out of time. So we have other people can have comments. Thank you.
I know there.
We need.
Yeah.
And if, excuse me, 1 second.
Okay.
How much more time do we have that we're working with?
You want him to go? You don't want me to go? Him?
If everyone could please limit their comments, I have to be strict to 1 minute because we want everyone that's standing to be able to try to get their comments out. Please, if you're not already standing, if you're not already standing up to make a comment, that's it. Only those that are standing, please. And please limit your comments. I saw you pop up. You gonna try to pop up on me?
She was already standing.
Okay. So the gentleman right here, after he makes his comment up here on the panel, please.
So being that I'm 35 and I'm barely in Generation X, I'm a millennial, or Y, I'm sorry, I'm a millennial. At the tip of it, I feel the need to defend the young brothers who choose to wear their pants. Although the older generation may find it repulsive, I feel like we should not demonize and compare someone's fashion statement with their level of intellect. I too wear my pants sagging sometimes. So let's just be careful qualifying folk when we sit up here criticizing the police department for discriminating when that's a form of discrimination in itself.
I'm Rocky McDaniel, and I've heard a lot about the body cameras that are made available for police departments to help officers wear those so that their supervisors can know what kind of attitude and how they interact with citizens in a city. And a lot of times they don't have enough fund to fund the whole police department, but they get like 20 of them, and you would take your new recruits, they would wear them during their first year as an officer or second years, some 1 year or 2 year program, to where their supervisors would be able to look and see how they interact and give them clues on how they should have acted and the way they should present themselves to the public. And I think that would be a good idea. I think each police, I think every 12 or 15 of them, they each have a supervisor. Is that right, a captain or a lieutenant on duty?
I don't know our ratio breakdown, but we are in agreement with you that on-body cameras is considered technology-wise best practices. We're in the process of researching that technology. The big question is are we going to be able to afford it?
And I want to respond to that, and that is, during the Clinton administration, the tough on crime, 3 strikes you out, resulted in the largest increases in federal and state prisons in American history, all right? Then they came up with what is called the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1994, which was also called the Federal Assault Weapon Act, that was written by then Senator Joe Biden, signed into law by Bill Clinton. Right. And they had so much money to work with. So it wasn't about police agencies not having the money, right? at one time, so much money was given to police forces as well as military weapons that included helicopters, that included assault weapons. All right, so it's not about them not having the money.
Thank you.
I just, thank you.
Remember this statement. When we present that bill as to what it's going to cost for this technology, I want that same energy because I want on-body cameras. but I want to see when we talk about potentially raising taxes or we have to do this or that to afford it, I want that same energy because we're in agreement. We want the cameras. But because I can tell you this, more often than not, those cameras are going to prove what we've been saying all along. Most of our officers do the right thing, and we have some that do not need to be there. And I think those cameras are going to illuminate that.
I would like for us to remember something. Remember two names, Rodney King and Eric Garner.
Both on camera.
Beware of magic pills. I want the police to have body cameras, but please remember, we don't have to ask what happened to Eric Garner. We heard him say, "I can't breathe" 11 times. And I don't need a body camera to know when a cop is serious about it, "I can't breathe." The first job of that cop is to do CPR, not to keep choking him.
I do think if we're looking at problems in terms of fixing errors, and to I'll go back to your case. I mean, it's. I think it's important, and you're, Judge, you're right. It's not going to have the effect in every instance, and it's funny. Technology is oftentimes sort of it's the path of least resistance. It's the thing that a lot of times politicians gravitate to. But I agree with the police chief in the sense I think it is a good policy, and you know what? We ought to measure it. We ought to see if it works. We ought to see if there's any evidence behind it. So I think I think that's an area. If it helps one, if it helps two, if it helps three, I think it's probably worth looking at.
Okay, sir.
Yes, thank you. My name is Ted Robinson. I wanted to make a couple of quick commendations. First of all, I wanted to thank you, brother, for doing what you're doing. Keep it up. Thank you very much. And Mr. Tolan, I saw your story on ID Discovery the first time it was shown. I just like to say, stay strong. Stay strong. And I'd like to say to Honorable Wendell Griffen, thank you for your statement of justice. I'm here tonight because of your statement of justice, as you stated on KUAR this morning, and I was very moved by what you had to say. And I feel a kindred spirit with you because you're straightforward and you take no mess. You just tell it like it is, and I appreciate that. I have a couple of real quick questions. One is to Senator David J. Sanders, and I will say, Mr. Sanders, and I'll just ask these two questions and then leave it down. What are you prepared to do as a state senator to address community concerns about how the laws negatively affect black men, like profiling, like stand your ground, et cetera, et cetera? The other question that I have, and I'll give a little bit of background, I'm owner of Concepts of Social Security, worked for the Social Security Administration for 26 years, and I learned how to read and deal with government entities. And you can make any decisions you want when you're with the federal government. The really issue comes from within. And this question is addressed to the chief. And I would ask you, what proactive actions are you prepared to take to check the biases that are associated with the police department? As an individual who was responsible for hiring, I had to check my biases and noted that I had some. What proactive actions are you willing to take in regard to the biases that the police department have? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I think it's very good. I would go back to what I said earlier in terms of I think the expectation for safety and public safety. I think that applies to everyone. That knows no bound whatsoever. And I think to acknowledge history, to acknowledge circumstances, and to look at how different communities are affected. How a lot of times in government we like a one-size-fits-all approach for every situation, and again, it doesn't matter the issue. I appreciate the police chief and what he said and what he's been certainly resolute to put himself out there and visit. I think you have to look at things related to community policing. But I think in the standpoint, as a policymaker who represents a particular area, I think you have to seek the input of all your colleagues. Not just your colleagues, but also the public. So I think when you debate issues and how they affect, in my area, and my focus has been on related to parole and probation. Yeah, the other part of the story that made me cringe was the case in Georgia where the builder apparently had the felony drug charge and was in violation of his probation. That's a serious matter as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you have to look at things systemically, and I think you have to look at them within the context of who they affect, and not just talk about averages, but talk about distribution.
I think it's also important, rather than asking the state senator a broad question like, what are you willing to do? We should ask him a more poignant question like, are you willing to support a human rights commission, a statewide human rights commission, when we know Arkansas is one of the few states that does not have a human rights commission. So I think that's a question that we should ask the senator.
Yeah, so the question is certainly something that we should talk about. I'm not familiar with the legislation. I don't know that anyone has sponsored it in the last session or the session before that. But I mean, but to the point, how about this? Look at the legislation. Obviously, it's going to promote some dialogue. I'll tell you, a lot of people on that hill, they'll never get this perspective. You know why? I don't think they show up. So I think, and again, I think it's important to hear perspective. We can talk about it. Let's talk about it. And I think that's what's most important is to try to understand things from different perspectives.
And do know who your Attorney General is, all right? The Attorney General had campaign commercials that said, I'm a gun-toting Christian. So we saw what the Attorney General did in so many other cases in the film. So perhaps this is what we can expect from the current Attorney General. No justice.
Come on, young lady.
Hi. Hello, I'm Janelle Holman. I'm with Just Communities of Arkansas. I have two questions, one for Chief Buckner. First of all, thank you all for being here. First of all, Chief Buckner, are you all currently collecting any data on who is stopped, when, by whom, and where with the police department? And then my question for the senator is, would you be willing to, never mind.
Just one question, please.
Wow. We collect data on who's stopped. That's kept in the computer and the CAD system as to who was run. The information is done with that. And in the format that you're talking about, from a racial bias system or racial profiling kind of system where some cities have, where you have like a card or something that you fill out based upon the occupants of the vehicles and things of that nature, we do not do that. Some of the pros and cons of that is telling me that I stopped you, that's only one part of the data, but it doesn't tell me how I treated you. So that's why some agencies don't think that that's really telling you anything, because if I can say that I stopped a black female, but it didn't say that I talked to her in a disrespectful way, then what did the data really tell me? You have to kind of, I guess, massage through how you want to do that. To the gentleman here, I didn't duck your question. I don't duck questions, I don't duck forms. To answer your question, we have what's called an early warning system. If Officer John Doe has so many uses of force within a certain period of time, he's put what's called monitoring, which means that we will randomly look at his information, randomly look at incidents involving him until we're satisfied that the information that we've received that put him on that warning list, that he's doing the right thing. So we have a system in place that does that. And since everyone else gets their moment, one of the things that I want to ask you, sir, since you brought that to me, because rarely do chiefs, and that's our fault, because we just come here and we field questions. If you're willing to come to this forum, are you, sir, willing to help me diversify my police department? Okay, and I'm gonna hold you to that, just the same way I want you all to hold me to that, because you say you run a business. I wanna meet with you after this, because I can tell you right now, folks, and please don't take this the wrong way, I'm tired of meeting. I'm tired of meeting. The documentary is good, signs are good, T-shirts are better. Action is what we're looking for. So this, please understand, that is my frustration. What we need as a police department. What I need from you as the number one, get engaged. Educate yourselves on what the laws are. Educate yourselves on what our rights are. The difference between communities who feel oppressed and communities who feel like they have a connection with the police department is they know the law. They know what you can and can't do. They know who to call when we misstep and when we do not serve them. They know the law. Get engaged and educate yourself. Second thing, diversity. We need more African-American males, females, Hispanic males, females. You can come to these meetings all you want to. If we're not trying to set destinations to somewhere where we're going to improve upon what we're doing, we're just meeting. That's frustrating. We do a great job of meeting, but we're not doing anything beyond the meetings. So if you know anything from me as an outsider, from looking at this kind of from a 7-month window, we need to get beyond talking. We do a great job of talking, myself included. Myself included. Third thing, objective support. I want you to be equally frustrated when we shoot an unarmed black male. I expect you to be, if it looks like it's a bad shooting and we don't do the right thing, I expect you to be upset. I expect you to hold us accountable. But I also want you to be upset when we had what happened in Michael Brown, because we often talk about what happened in Michael Brown's case where the prosecutor didn't do his job. But I've never heard anyone in the public forum say, I'm upset with the 25 people who said they saw it all, and then they get in that grand jury room and they tell a different story. But you're not upset about that. But you're not upset about that. So I want objective support. When we're right, support us. When we're wrong, hold me accountable. Thank you.
I want to add one quick little tidbit to that. I commend you for being here, and I understand that you're tired of meeting. Real quick, brief story. Kelly and Keith and I were talking last night, and it was with regards to the movie Selma, the Voting Rights Act, but what Kelly said was really poignant, and it applies in this. He said, you know, people voted for Obama and they voted for change and they voted, you know, whatever, and they voted and then they went home. And to what Kelly said was it doesn't stop with the voting, it starts with the voting. So to add to what you said, it doesn't stop with the meeting in the town hall meetings, it starts with this. So
I agree.
Just like he said, you know, don't just come to the meeting and feel justified and, oh, okay, well I can go home and, you know, and it's over. There's work to be done when we leave here.
We have a question here on the floor.
Thank you very much, Judge, Senator, Captain. Thank you for your service.
Yes, sir.
The war on drugs, the Republican war on drugs, is fought in his neighborhood. It's not fought in my neighborhood. It's racist. Yep. David Koch, right? Is he talking about the war on poverty now? No. What is the Republican administration, you and Asa Hutchinson, what are you going to do to end the targeting, the drug war, which is a racial war?
I disagree with some of, I guess, so the assertion made in the statement. I think it is, I think the ravage that drugs have weighed on society are enormous. I think it has, we see it every day. I think there is the belief by some that our prisons are full of people who were simply in possession. But if you look at the data and review the data, as I do quite often, it's not the case. I will say this. If it's crack cocaine or powder cocaine, it should be the same. It's not. No, yeah. No, but no. You asked, so I'm telling you. And I think I don't think we should be disproportionate in how we prosecute those. So that's one small example. But the notion that somehow we should some, and I'm not suggesting that you were suggesting this, the notion that we should sort of wave the flag and say we're done and we're just going to decriminalize and allow it.
Portugal did it years ago, lower crime.
Okay.
Let's respect the process. I mean, I agree 100%, but let's respect the process.
Yeah, you know, I just.
We have another question here on the floor. Thank you.
Move to Portugal.
Good evening, everyone. I am Christy Fomanezi-Cunny, and I'm a former probation parole officer for many years, and I wanted to address this to Chief Buckner. I'm so happy that everybody that's on this panel decided to come out tonight and give us your attention. Judge Wendell Griffen, Ms. Shepherd, Robbie, we were in the studio earlier with KBF, him and myself, Mondale, Kelly, and Keith. And basically, this is what I talked about on the radio, and I know that you're just new here, Chief Buckner, but the concept that has been discussed all night long, and I don't think anybody maybe haven't brought it out, the community-oriented policing process here in Arkansas, that has vanished. I remember back when people like Troy Ellison, who was an officer here, Brother Hassan, we knew the concept on the ground of community-oriented policing, and I want to know now, because you speak and say that you're willing to come and meet, we need to take that next step, but I really don't think people are listening to the community, so I want to know, what is the next step? Where do we go from here? Are you all willing to actually listen to the community?
In the police department's defense, I'm not the chief, and I'm not into defending the chief. He's a big guy who can speak for himself. But I will say, the chief said he wants action, all action, delivered demands to the police department, and in his respect, he was there. He accepted demands, and he also said that he'd be willing to meet the demands and work towards some type of community involvement.
Meeting to discuss the demands.
Right. Well, meet demands is discussion.
Right. The one gentleman left. I'm sorry, young lady. The one gentleman left, and he said about the variations in how we go about prosecuting drugs versus a white gentleman who's doing powder and our African American brother who's doing crack cocaine. From our standpoint, as to how that gets on our radar, the difference between the two from a public safety standpoint is the white gentleman who's doing this powder, who should equally be prosecuted. They should be treated the same. I think we all agree about that. You don't have the social aspect of tearing of the communities in a powder cocaine kind of neighborhood like you do crack cocaine, where you're going to have the violence, the things that attract our attention, calls for service, homicides, robberies, these kinds of things that police get called upon. Now, we can act as if that we don't disagree with that, but we know what crack-infested, drug-infested communities look like. We know the difference between what a powdered cocaine community looks like versus a crack-infested community looks like. Again, we're intelligent people. Whether you agree with me or not, you know I'm telling you the truth.
Thank you so much, Chief. We have a question on the floor.
We have white boys in Denver that are making billions of dollars on the legal sale of marijuana, but we have young black boys who are going to prison. 3 strikes you out, mandated by your illustrious Bill Clinton that you revere so much. All right, who are in prison for the rest of their lives for having a dime bag of marijuana in their pockets.
I'm very happy to have this opportunity to hear public input and to be somebody in the public to be able to give y'all some input. And I know that a lot of y'all probably remember back in July the police decided to end public access to the and began encrypting police traffic, and I guess that was under your watch.
Yes, ma'am, it was. That was my decision.
Buckner. So can you kind of talk to us about what you think the role of transparency is in building community? There was no open forum about that. There was no discussion about that before the city board. So as police chief, talk to us about what you think the role of transparency is in building accountability. You've asked for us to hold you accountable, so.
Well, first thing I'll do is I'll correct the record. Second, there were a number of discussions about encryption publicly. There was a discussion before our city directors. Encryption was done on our part because of public safety. When someone can listen to a police officer's response to an incident, I feel puts our officers at risk. If we have an opportunity to be able to encrypt those radio channels to where you cannot take an app on a cell phone and listen to our conversations, we saw that as a safety issue for the police. Now, I realize that that would catch a lot of criticism from folks who listen to their scanners and radars and things, and I get that. So to meet kind of in the middle of the road with that, we gave what's called kind of a delayed communication of what those transactions are with the radio. So it's not timely in that you get it instant like you did in the past, but it is released, and then we added an addition to that to where it stays up for 8 hours, and you can go in and put your address in and see if something happened in that area as it relates to the radio, and you didn't have that feature before. So it's not a perfect system, but I made that decision. I stand behind that decision. If I had to make that decision again tomorrow, I would do it without hesitation.
I would like to speak to two things. One is the so-called war on drugs and the notion that we somehow have become a safer society because of it. And secondly, the issue of transparency. First of all, in 1972, there were less than 300,000, I said 300,000 people in U.S. nation prisons and jails, state and federal. Less than 300,000. In 1974, there was a national commission, Senator, that actually proposed that there would be an end to juvenile lockups and closing adult lockups. The war on drugs started, and there been produced a 500% increase in the number of people in prison. Now, let me suggest something to you. I read the numbers too. And the population of our Arkansas State Prison, 52% of them are in prison for non-violent or property crimes. Now, and most of the people in prison on drugs crimes are not on prison for cell crimes. So now let's talk about the facts. Second thing, on transparency. I 10-time double dog dare you to show me any data where there has been a citizen intervention of a police response based upon intercepting police traffic in Pulaski County. Bet.
I want to say, quick story. May 29th this year, a young man named Will Johnston was paroled out of the state prison system. On July 17th, his birthday, he was extradited from Shelby County to Jefferson County and charged with capital murder and attempted capital murder. This supposedly was a nonviolent individual. If you look at his convictions, if you could actually see all of them, you would see drugs and you would see property crimes. But what was missing and what isn't public in this state is what Mr. Johnston did when he was incarcerated. Judge, as you know, we hold what happens on the streets is public record. What happens behind bars isn't public record. So let me tell you something about him really quickly. This individual had 28 major disciplinary violations. Most of them were violent. Assaulting other inmates. He conspired to kill a prison guard inside of prison. And furthermore, what he did was he recruited for an in-house prison gang.
So we should thank the prison system for criminalizing him more.
We have a question.
By your own account, he was nonviolent until you put him in prison.
The prison gang that he recruited for was the Aryan Circle, and when he was paroled, he was assigned an African-American parole officer. They didn't even take it into account. This was what I would say is, and what he was classified as, and when his parole records were reviewed, they only looked at the nonviolent and drug charges, but as they dug back into his history, Judge, he also had been convicted of violent criminals. This is someone who we let out, who did, in fact, and it was charged now with capital murder, and it was clearly evident that if you are willing to conspire using the prison mail system to kill a prison guard, and that if you're recruiting for the Aryan Circle inside of prison, a white supremacist prison gang, and you're let out and you're assigned an African-American prison guard, there's something not right with the system.
Thank you. We have a question on the floor.
My issue is the police has failed us, the justice system has failed us, and in turn that there's a resurgence of that 1995 NWA attitude with many African Americans. And you expect us to run to you when you are responsible for this system, a system that assassinates a 107-year-old man in his bed. So we're supposed to forget all that and be loved up and be friends with you? That's not gonna happen.
That's twisted.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tony Davis, and I have something to say. I have a comment, and I see that we're all trying to solve racial profiling, police brutality, among other things, children hanging their pants down their butts, drug addiction. I say we don't solve these issues without looking at the issue that's causing these issues, and it's huge. Now, I implore everybody in the room to look something up tonight. Don't wait. Look it up tonight. I implore you all to write this down. We live in a system, we think we live in a system of democracy, and that's not even close to true. We live in a system of what's called white supremacy racism. There's no other racism. I don't need any applause. The only response I need is to follow through. Commit yourself to looking these people up, because you can explain white supremacy racism. What it really is, most of us don't know what it is. I didn't know until I researched it. Okay, so I implore everybody in the room, look up Frances Cress Welsing. She's been explaining this for 45 years, still hasn't caught on. And look up, some of y'all have heard of, look up Neely Fuller, Umar Johnson. These people explain this, they break it down, and that's the only way we're gonna solve this. Otherwise,
I have a response to that. By no means do I believe all police officers are good police officers. By no means do I believe that all black people are criminals. By no means do I believe that all white folks are racist. I would challenge you to find any civil rights picture of documentation, and we have a gentleman here who's known for documentaries. I challenge you to find any pictures of any civil rights movement that did not have white people in it. Black people are 12% of the U.S. population. It is mathematically impossible for us to elect Barack Obama, our first black president. So this notion of talking about this white supremacy and everyone's, that's not what
Hold on one second. Respect the process.
Hang on for a second. Hang on.
Hold on one second. Hold on one second.
Excuse me.
Hang on for a second. So this notion that we are divided is an error. This is an error.
One person at a time talking. One person at a time, please.
So every time
Okay, thank you so much.
That's my statement.
Another
in America,
question.
every time there's a shift in America that threatens white supremacy, do know that new legislation is put in force that protects whiteness and white supremacy.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Everybody take a deep breath, all right?
Right. See.
Ms. Shepherd, good to see you again.
Thank you.
Good to see you again, sir.
Judge?
Carlos, I want to say I'm feeling very white right now. What can I do?
I'm feeling brown, okay?
You got it.
Your question.
Black.
I just have one question.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Carlos.
They're getting ready to go right ahead and bring to the floor, stand your ground. You know, will you support it?
You know,
Before you answer that.
No, I'll answer it right now because, I mean, so here's the thing, because it's a very interesting perspective, particularly given the case in Georgia. And so we were having some substantive discussions up here. I think what's key, and it goes to the heart of the question earlier, is like you need to look at policies and how they impact different communities. And in this case, I mean, again, reading and looking up some of this, you look at sort of how it's applied. I mean, you You guys had it in Texas. You know, it's. I think it deserves a robust conversation with all points of view.
We have one last question, comment.
Actually.
We have other family.
Okay, sure.
Right.
Sure.
No, let's go ahead, because that was the last from the floor. So at this point, since you have a question, we're going to open it up for the families to speak. Right, we know. We were going to have the families speak. So we're going to give you the floor anyway. So your question, and then we wanted to give you opportunity to speak on behalf of your family or any other family members that you have with you.
First of all, my name is Spencer Ellison. I'm the eldest son of Eugene Ellison, who was tragically killed 4 years ago here in Little Rock, Arkansas.
By the police?
By the Little Rock Police Department, that I was employed by and worked for 14 years. There I served as a detective in violent crimes. I worked in financial crimes. I worked in auto theft. I worked in various divisions of the police department. What I want to tell everybody in here is the problem that we have, there is a disconnection with the police department. It's a shame. I lost 2 families. I lost great friends and colleagues. I worked at the police department. When they investigated my father's tragic death, I expected them to do the right thing, but they didn't do it. They didn't do it. And I'm very upset about it. Some people I grew up with, they signed that paper, I justified the shooting. And they know damn well it wasn't that ain't what happened. Okay? But what we need to do here also as well, too, is we have to educate ourselves. I do agree with the chief. Educate yourself. Look at the criminal justice books. Look at your criminal codes. Just read it. It's at 8th grade level. You can read it. Read it and understand what it's all about. But there is a problem with our police department. I've had many citizens come to me as a detective and say, hey, Mr. Ellison, what happened to my case? Why didn't this happen? Why did this happen? And you know what we do? We turn a blind eye. And if you come to us enough, you know what we're going to do? We're going to check your history. So in essence, what this does is it discourages the person who is trying to follow up on their loved one. And in essence, too, they are left with this loss for many years. We have a lot of disgruntled people here tonight. And I promise I wasn't going to say anything or go into the details of our case because we still have an active lawsuit, unfortunately. But I felt like I had to say something to educate our audience, too. Don't stop what you're doing. We didn't go out here with no rallies. We didn't go out here holding up no posters. But what we did do is you pick and choose your battles. I went through the ACLU. Where are they today? They're not here. I went through the NAACP. Where are they? They're not here. I went to our Attorney General, wrote letters. I wrote letters to the federal government, to the FBI. I went so far to Eric Holder and hand-delivered our situation. Where are they? I received a letter just recently, as of last week, stating that they received my letter and I was trying to follow up on a complaint. My name, my address, and everything was on there. I received a notice, dear friend, instead of Mr. Ellison. This is a professional agency. We know that there are issues with our Department of Justice system. It's a broken system. We could talk about what's going on every day. We talk about drugs, et cetera, et cetera. The bottom line is you have to pick and choose your battles, and you have to follow up. And the best way of following up on what's going on is proper education. There are some good officers at the Little Rock Police Department. There are some bad ones there. We need some accountability. And I think that's what some of the citizens are upset about. We feel the same way. And it starts, I mean, it's just like raising a child. You discipline that child, over the period of time, sooner or later, that child is going to catch on with what's going on. And you correct the behavior. But until our chief, unfortunately, he came up under this, hold people accountable for messing up and screwing up, we're going to have this issue, and we're going to continuously talk about this over and over again. So start by educating yourself. And our fight is not over. My hearts go out to you, too.
There was another family.
So while we're waiting
for the family,
respond, I'm going to say that I was thrilled to hear that the Pope said you cannot insult the faith of other people. Je suis black.
I will add this. As a judge, I will tell you that one of the most aggravating things for me is to see the double standard that is applied for conduct that is abusive or homicidal when people in law enforcement do it, as opposed to when people who are outside law enforcement do it. Now, if the idea of justice means anything, it should mean that people who do the same conduct should face the same consequences. If I go out and beat up somebody, I shouldn't get a license to beat them up because I have a job called cop. And if I go out and kill somebody, I shouldn't be able to have my buddies investigate my killing and then have them write off me as a killer because I'm a cop. That is one of the problems that causes distrust. As a judge, I will tell you, when people distrust the process, they will distrust the people who do the procedures.
Was someone going to speak on behalf of Monroe Isidore's family?
They left.
They left.
Let me just remember Monroe Isidore, a 107-year-old black man, killed in his house, killed in his bed. Listen to me very carefully. Before you talk about stand your ground, how about stay in your bed and get killed? Okay? Now, let me explain something to you. I'm reasonably intelligent, and I've done a little bit of study on the law. There is no law that gives anybody a license to go and kill somebody just because they in bed and don't want to come out. And that was the only thing Monroe Isidore did. He was in his house, in his bed, and he did not want to come out. Eugene Ellison was in his apartment, minding his business, and he got killed. Now, the truth of the matter is, it shouldn't take a rocket scientist at a police department or a mayor's office or a courtroom or a prosecutor's office to say, those are bad killings. Those are not justified killings.
If I may, we had one more question, and I forgot to ask. Senator, who is filing the Stand Your Ground bill in the legislature this session?
I don't know.
Don't know. Okay.
Let me talk about Stand Your Ground. Here's the problem with Stand Your Ground. Here's where I'm standing ground. And check the data. In all of the states where Stand Your Ground has passed, homicide rate has gone up. Homicide rate has gone up. So if Stand Your Ground is supposed to make people safe, why is it that the people who are safest are in states that don't have Stand Your Ground?
My closing statement, I want to just close basically saying with what I opened with. We can live in peace or in pieces. And I say that, and I don't say it haphazardly. I just want you to think about Oscar Grant's family, Kendrick Johnson, our family here, Monroe Isidore, and these are families that I just learned of because I'm not from this area. There are many others, Amadou Diallo, Ramarley Graham, Trayvon Martin, Sean Bell, Jordan Davis, Emmett Till, almost 60 years ago. And we receive phone calls all the time of another victim that they say is likened of Emmett Till today. So I just say, I hope that tonight you receive something and you take away something from tonight that you can go home and think about that will help you turn whatever that action was, that anger was that you may have felt, turn that anger into action. And it's not just about our innocent loved ones of color, but let's also remember victims such as the 2 NYPD police victims that were murdered in New York.
Thank you.
They have families too. Raphael Ramos and Wenjean Lee, we have to remember them as well. I think we can't just go out and just, in the word it says turn the other cheek. And we have to do that. If Emmett Till's mother can forgive his murderers, then we can turn the other cheek and we can forgive the murderers of these other victims somehow. And I'm not saying that lightly because I'm the 3rd generation, and I still don't understand how they can forgive the murderers of Emmett Till.
I respect what you said, but let me be very careful. Let me be real careful.
That's my
I respect what you said, but let me just say this point blank.
I wasn't finished.
It is wrong to profile police officers and kill them, and it's wrong for police officers to profile other people and kill. The problem that we have is that the killer of those 2 New York police officers was a mentally deranged man who was not supposed to be killing people.
Respectfully,
However,
I understand that.
Respectfully, I have a problem when we allow police officers to kill people and we don't treat the victims of the police killings the way we treat police officers who are victimized when they're killed.
That's a whole nother discussion. I was saying, for me personally, my remarks on how I feel in my closing comments with regards to the value of life, period, that was my comment. That's a whole nother discussion. But I respect what you're saying, and that's true. I don't dispute it. So I'm going to turn it over to Keith so he can close us out. Thank you.
Are we getting closing statement?
Thank you so much, Erica, for coming. Okay. Now we're towards the end of the road. I want to give our panelists an opportunity to give closing statements. Well, hold on. I'll allow 2 minutes for each of you, if that's okay. Well, come on, we gotta let. Hey,
do the math.
This is a town hall forum.
Yeah.
We want to allow everyone an opportunity to speak. So please bear with us. I mean, all of us came here tonight to really try to figure out a way we can all make a difference or how we can all work together. Because, I mean, I'm sure all of us can agree we need the police, right? Right? We just want good policing, right? All right. So I think the chief coming out, I mean, he's a man's man, and for him to come out, it's great to have him here and participate in this type of forum. So I have to tip my hats out to him and commend him for doing this.
Thank you for inviting me, sir.
But I also want to allow everybody else to get an opportunity to talk. So just bear with us, and we're going to get through this. Robbie, would you like to start? And we're going to go down this road.
I'll be very brief because I'm sure we all want to get out of here, and I'm hungry.
Well, see, the work is just started. Come on.
But that's what I want to close with. You know, like I said earlier, and this is a quote from Kelly. I don't know where there he is, but it doesn't stop. The work doesn't stop with the town hall meeting. You know, it's good to see everybody come out and get fired up and get on the mic and pepper us with questions, but it doesn't stop with the town hall meeting. It starts with it. So I hope that you all can go home and like Erica said, turn some of that anger and that tenacity into action, positive action. We don't want you out here, you know, killing folk. But it doesn't stop with the the town hall meeting. This is where it starts. So that's all I got. And thank you for all for coming and allowing me to be here.
Thank you, Keith and Erica and Robbie, for being here, and my fellow panelists. And I'm going to be really brief too. I just want to make two statements. This is everybody's problem, and we all have responsibility. And in terms of those of us who happen to have white skin, we have to come to terms with white privilege. We have to own it and better understand it. I mean, we got to own it. With those of us who do not have white skin, I think the other side of that coin, we have to own internalized oppression. We got to own it, we got to understand it, and we all got to meet somewhere and say, we all are flawed. We all have something to learn. And the second point I want to make is that I think we need to lead with our head, our heart, and our hand. We got to get new information. We got to be open to hearing somebody else's story, because everybody's story is different. We've got to be convicted in our heart that we really can make a difference, and then we have to work on, okay, so what does that mean? What do we do after this town hall meeting is over? And I'm in for the ride. I hope you are too.
Thank you.
Dang, I forgot what I was going to say.
Ms. Brown?
All right, and so here we are, 2015, new year, same fight, and still there is no justice in the world, and certainly not in America. America is a criminal nation, a country that exploits violence all over the world and has the highest incarceration rate, mostly of blacks, in the world. America is a criminal nation. Okay, I only have 2 minutes. Okay, so that goes 60. All right, and so...
35 seconds.
Pardon?
No, that was 35 seconds.
35, okay. All right, and so I'm sure all of you were socialized very much like I was as a child. You know, you heard your parents say, stop, quit, don't do that, quit, all right? And, you know, that was our socialization. And then we go off to school and we have a racial socialization. We all remember, what's the name? Jane, Dick, Spot, Puff, and we all remember the repetitive phrases of see, Spot, run. Well, I also remember how I had to socialize my son to tell him, make sure your driver's license are current, make sure you have no tail lights that are busted, make sure you have your insurance, and don't blast your music. Well, guess what? I like to blast my music listening to Frankie Beverly, okay? All right? And so I might get stopped. And who knows, it could happen to me, that happened to him. So how do we socialize our children? Our young black men and children, how do we protect them in this country? And so, all right, that's 45 seconds. Okay.
That's
and so there's a famous famous author named Arundhati Roy from India, and she wrote, there can be no real peace without justice, and without resistance, there will be no justice.
All right, thank you, Ms. Brown. All right, Chief.
Let me know when I'm starting, let me know.
Chief, go ahead.
I want to see zeros. I want to make sure I get my
I'm going to give you your time now. A little reset. You ready?
I'm ready, sir.
All right, here we go.
Mr. McAdoo, stand up, sir. Stand up.
Good brother.
Good brother right there.
Good brother.
He and I initially met at a forum to where his son was stopped or was moved out of the River Market area because officers were kind of shooing kids out of the area because something had happened the previous weekend. He and his wife were offended and upset about that. We had some philosophical differences as to how we thought that should have been handled. one of the things that we have to do is we have to be willing to work with people we disagree with. Mm-hmm. That brother will tell you that even though he and I disagree on a lot of things, I always show him respect. Mm-hmm. Mr. Mondale called me. I don't agree with everything this brother says. I don't agree with everything what Judge Griffen says, but they will tell you I am respectful. And we cannot get to where we say we want to go if we're not respectful. We don't have to agree on everything, but we have to work together. True. The 10 things that we don't agree upon, set them to the side. In some instances, progress is working on the 2 things that we agree upon. So we have to be able to do that. Last thing, NIV version, Galatians 6 and 9. Let us not become weary of doing good. For at the proper time, we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Look that up for yourself. And when you look it up, ask yourself, what are you doing besides meeting to solve these problems? Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Brother Mondale.
I don't need 2 minutes. I just need a couple seconds, mainly to say that a couple days ago, 2,500 people were murdered in Nigeria. Those people are black. Some of them undoubtedly are related to me because that's where my genes are from. Not my DKNY genes, but my genes. 141 years ago, one of the first black representatives to the United States Congress, born a slave, argued, probably gave one of the best speeches of his era in defense of the Civil Rights Act, probably this country's first Civil Rights Act. For a year, politicians debated that Civil Rights Act, and when it passed, it was watered down. So to that, I say, I believe politics takes sacrifice, just not when we're talking about equality.
Senator?
Well, I want to thank the organizers of this event for putting it together. One, I want to thank whoever had the idea of inviting me to come. I've enjoyed being here, and I think it's Kelly. Thank you very much. I think it's important to listen, not only to listen, but to learn from other people's perspective. And you can't do that unless you put yourself out there. And I do appreciate everyone on the panel, particularly the chief. I think he has demonstrated, really demonstrated the type of attitude and the humbleness of what we were supposed to be. We're supposed to be public servants, not public dictators and or public prognosticators or public preachers in a sense of telling people what we think. But we're here to serve and protect. My commitment is that I will be here to listen always and to share and to learn, and also fight for the expectation that everyone can feel safe. Everyone can feel safe, and I think until we reach that point, that's what we have to work. I don't know that we'll ever get there, but that's certainly what we have to work for, and that's my commitment.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. Judge?
Fannie Lou Hamer, 50 years ago, said at the Democratic National Convention, "I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired." And I am like Fannie Lou Hamer. I am sick and tired of us acting as if police brutality and racial profiling are caused by people other than police. Sick and tired of us acting as if communities cause racial profiling. I'm sick and tired of us acting as if communities of color cause police brutality. That's not so. Racial profiling and police brutality are not caused by people of color. They're caused by a dysfunctional law enforcement culture. And until that culture is confronted and is changed, we will keep meeting, Chief, but we will keep meeting because the people who are in charge of the culture haven't changed the culture.
All right. Okay. Let's have it for our panelists, please. Thank you all. Let's clap. Applause for our panelists. I have one more thing before you leave.